Rugby Championship for 2020 looks to have taken another step closer with the fixtures list out for the 2020 competition. Remember, all these games are going to be played in Australia. Knocking on wood that they actually go ahead. We've still got to see the squads travel to Australia. Remember, the Wallabies are currently, I think they're arriving in New Zealand today for a couple of Bledisloe games before they head back across the ditch to play these games in Australia. We're still waiting for South African rugby to get back underway. If anyone's got any updates on what's happening in Argentina, I know those guys have been in training camp, but then there's been cases of guys getting COVID and having to isolate and whatnot, so I'm not too up with the play on what's happening with the Pumas. But what we do have for all these squads is news out about the fixtures list. All the games are being played in Queensland and New South Wales. I think tickets are going on sale next month for you guys who are in Australia if you want to get along to the games. I'm assuming it's going to be socially distanced crowds as always, and I think preference is going to Super Rugby season ticket holders, but that's just the way it usually goes. But yeah, here are the fixtures, and what you will see is there's no difference between the days these teams are playing. They're essentially, I haven't seen the times, but they essentially seem to all be double headers. So round one is going to see Argentina and the Springboks play, and then Australia and New Zealand play. So it's going to be kind of back-to-back, which I guess makes sense in terms of the logistics, keeping everyone together. It is interesting, only one game is in Queensland. All the rest are in New South Wales. That's a surprising one, given the size of Suncorp and whatnot. But yeah, it does seem to get the competition a wee step closer. A few, I guess, highlights of the fixtures list is you'll notice it's in, like, it goes one order and then it immediately reverses. So you'll see there's a pretty tasty looking, like New Zealand takes on the Springboks. Springboks take on New Zealand in kind of a back-to-back, week-to-week series. And this is just total action without let up, man. It's week after week after week after week from November 7th to December 12th. It's just non-stop, man. You're going to have 6 solid weeks of rugby. Usually Rugby Championship has a gap in the middle. Now, this isn't without controversy. Of course, it's Sansa. They can't seem to do anything without causing some kind of ruckus. But this December 12th date here has caused issues in New Zealand rugby, has aired the dirty laundry and said that they're disappointed with the fixtures list in that it's not what they apparently agreed to. How these guys didn't sort this out before it was sorted, before it was publicised, or why New Zealand rugby didn't talk to Sansa behind closed doors, I don't know. But New Zealand's come back and said this date, when you combine the fact that when the New Zealand guys come back to New Zealand, they've got to quarantine for 2 weeks, means they won't be home in time for Christmas. They'll be home, but they won't be home. They'll be in New Zealand, but they won't be able to leave their quarantine hotels. I would imagine the Argentinian guys and South African guys would be hard-pressed to get back home in time as well. So yeah, New Zealand rugby's come out and said, we didn't agree to this. So yeah, that is what it is. I would imagine one or two things happens. Either from the New Zealand perspective, either the New Zealand government relaxes the laws for those guys to get out. Maybe that's a bit less likely. Or any of the New Zealand guys who are desperate to get home, they leave after this game against Argentina and then skedaddle off. And the guys who are willing to stay and spend Christmas in isolation would remain with the squad. Probably guys with young families would be the ones that want to be home. Nothing quite like Christmas with kids around compared to, adults. It's not quite the same deal. But yeah, like I said, a couple of back-to-backs against Argentina from a New Zealand's perspective looks pretty good. Bookended with the games against Australia. I mean, that's reversal as well for the Wallabies. That's pretty nice. The fact that you get that opening game where maybe you're shaking off a bit of rust. You've just played 2 Bledisloe games. You're going back for a couple of weeks quarantine, and then you get back at it, and then it's that final game. Yeah, it just seems quite appealing from a New Zealand point of view. I'm not sure if it's disrespectful to say maybe South African fans would be happy, maybe likewise Argentinian fans actually, maybe happy to get a game up against each other first. If these guys are playing Bledisloe games in October, maybe it's fair that these guys play each other first because they haven't had as much rugby as everybody else. So maybe they're a little bit underdone, so they get to play each other first before tackling the teams which have been playing more recently. And South Africa don't have to worry about the All Blacks until they've played, 2 games already. But that being said, Australia is the home team, so don't be writing them off under Dave Rennie. So, I'll have to have a look at the odds at some point. But that is essentially the fixtures list. Like I mentioned, it's kind of reversed, so it mirrors itself from the first 3 weeks to the second 3 weeks. You got games at Suncorp, Bankwest, which is in Sydney, ANZ, which is in Sydney, and then a couple of games, or just one game at Newcastle, and then back to Bankwest at ANZ. Tickets will be on sale for you guys in Australia. Still not 100% convinced it's going to go ahead, but man, I'm hoping. I am hoping. You guys let me know what you think about the fixtures list. I guess it does kind of make sense. How big a deal do you think the final week of games is? I think it's manageable. Apparently New Zealand Rugby wanted midweek games to try and shorten the overall length of competition. But it's every game is on a Saturday. So, yeah. Haven't quite set the times. The times will also be interesting because with, all the different time zones there, it could be very early or very late for some people. Maybe in the middle of the night. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, rugby, international rugby. Happy days. Every story that comes out that sees us inching one step closer to international rugby can only bring a smile to your dial, even if it's with a bit of cloudy sans nonsense. But you guys let me know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.